Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Well, howdy, folks. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we examine, extrapolate, and excavate the scariest movie of all time.
Each episode covers a single minute of William Friedkin's 1973 horror masterpiece, The Exorcist.
If you like deep dives, this show is the deepest.
Did you know the film's iconic theme song, Tubular Bells, wasn't written specifically for the movie?
Or that the 1973 audience members were throwing up and fainting in the theater before they ever got a glimpse of the demon?
Or what about all the crazy on-set mishaps, cast injuries, the director firing real guns?
Ooh. Ever wonder where Ouija boards came from or how they got their name? How about some history on the Catholic Church or the Roman rite of exorcism? Or maybe we can tempt you with some juicy demonology lore. Did you know that Pazuzu had an ex-wife? Find The Exorcist Minute on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows or at theexorcistminute.com. Until next time, folks,
the power of The Exorcist compels you.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Carnival of Souls is over. What do you think? I'm an alcoholic? I just like to start the day off in a good mood.
Good luck, Mary. Stop by and see us the next time you're in.
Thank you, but I'm never coming back.
I don't know about that girl.
How do you mean?
Day before yesterday, she was the only one of 3 girls to survive an accident. You'd think she'd feel a little something. Maybe in her place, I'd do the same thing. Just pick up life again. But I still say she's behaving strangely.
I have no desire for the close company of other people.
My dear, you cannot live in isolation from the human race.
Who's the man in the hall?
Maybe you heard the boards pop or something.
I didn't hear him, Mrs. Thomas. I saw him.
There's nobody there.
He's been following me, that's all there is to it.
That old pavilion out by the lake. Somehow you associate it with all this, don't you?
There was someone else there. That strange man was there.
Hysteria won't solve anything. Now control yourself.
You think I imagined all of it, don't you? You think I'm insane?
I didn't say that. I don't mean that.
That's just what I need. Get mixed up with some girls off a rocker.
I don't want to be left alone.
Well, if she's got a problem, it'll go right along with her.
Before we get started, let's take a step back and examine this film's title, Carnival of Souls. It sounds like the perfect setup for a spine-chilling ghost story, doesn't it? At first glance, carnivals might not seem like particularly spooky places, but when you dig a little deeper, you'll find that they have a dark side lurking beneath the surface. Think about it. The unsettling grin of a clown, the eerie curiosities on display in the sideshow tents, or the unnerving tales of the carnival's resident geek. These elements have the power to send shivers down your spine, but there's one attraction that truly embodies the haunting atmosphere of a carnival: the Tunnel of Love. In its heyday, the Tunnel of Love was a scandalous ride that lured countless lovers into its dark embrace. Couples would climb into small boats and disappear into the darkness, their hearts racing as they drifted past spooky scenes and ghostly props. But as time passed and society's norms shifted, the Tunnel of Love began to lose its allure and many of these rides vanished, not unlike the abandoned carnivals they once called home. Now, these forgotten amusement parks stand as echoes of a bygone era, their once lively grounds haunted by the whispers of long-lost souls. The Tunnel of Love, with its decaying facade and eerie stillness, serves as a reminder of the secrets and scandals that once took place within its shadowy depths. And just like the ghostly carnival, the Next Reel family of film podcasts is here to haunt your dreams with the specters of cinema past. We're the whispers in the dark, the creaking floorboards, the flickering shadows on the wall, and if you dare to join our amusement park of movie magic, you might just find yourself lost in our phantom world. But don't worry, we've got a special deal for brave souls like you. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you can become a member of the entire Next Reel podcast family. The Next Reel, the Film Board, Sitting in the Dark, CinemaScope, and Movies We Like. You'll get access to bonus episodes, early and extended editions of our shows, and access to our exclusive Discord member channels. A virtual tunnel of love where you can share your own spooky stories and commune with other lost souls. So step right up and take a ride with us. Visit truestory.fm/join to become a member. But be warned, once you enter our ghostly realm, you may never find your way back to the land of the living. Then again, you may never want to. And now, back to the conversation.
Oh, this movie, Andy. That guy is the worst.
Yeah.
Somebody
right?
send him the consent video.
Right. Even in 1962, I'm like, wow, it's like he's definitely on that line of the James Dean types of wannabe, road racers sort of things. Like he definitely fits in with kind of the people who are drag racing, like we see at the start of the film, but just so much sleazier. He's like the worst.
Oh my God, so sleazy. So sleazy. It's terrible. The movie overall it's a good movie. You had me watch this other thing that I had never watched before we watched this movie.
Oh, you'd never seen it. So Carnival of Souls, just getting started with this, I guess, Herk Harvey, who directed this, a film that he had seen that was part of the inspiration for this was this short film called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, directed by Robert Enrico. And it was a French short film, no dialogue, based on an 1890 short story by Ambrose Bierce. The story here is, there's this note at the beginning that says, it's during the Civil War, anyone who's caught messing with bridges, railroads, or tunnels will be executed. And at the start, we see these Union soldiers getting ready to hang a prisoner. They hang him, the rope snaps, he escapes. He has a moment of kind of looking at nature and like reconnecting with things before they start shooting at him. He realizes, crap, I'm alive. And he goes on the run, runs through the forest, makes it all the way to his house where he sees his wife. He runs toward her, and then suddenly his neck jerks back, and we see that he has just been hung. And that was all kind of like the flashes in his mind right before he died. Great little short film. I actually saw this back in college. We had those film programs that would run through campus periodically, and once in a while they would include a short film before the film. And I saw this then, and I've always remembered this just because that is such a great twist at the end of the story, And you can see once you have watched Carnival of Souls, you really get a sense of what Harvey and his team really gravitated toward as far as like crafting this.
Yeah, because, well, spoiler horn, that's pretty much what we get. Movie starts with teens, recalcitrant teens doing stupid things with cars. And they're drag racing one another, as teens are wont to do. And they hit a bridge, and in a, I mean, comically predictable avalanche of horror, one of the cars goes into the drink and sinks very, very fast. And they can't find anybody until, this is weird, one of the girls in the car walks out. And there she is. She's muddy and messy, but she's trying to rebuild her life. She is a survivor.
Yes.
So the whole setup, the whole premise, do you enjoy where we're going? Did you know where the movie was going when you started?
I had the mistake of glancing at the Wikipedia page for the film before I watched the movie. So when I saw, I didn't read the plot, but when I saw that it was loosely based on an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, I instantly knew, because once you know that film, and anytime anyone mentions it now to you, you'll always go, oh, I know exactly where you're going with this. So I had a pretty good sense of what Harvey was doing here, along with his screenwriter, John Clifford. I guess the question that I had then as I watched it is like, how is he going to craft this tale in a way where this all makes sense? And so that was the ride I took for this one, because I hadn't seen this film before.
Okay, good. Well, me neither. And so I hadn't seen it, and I also hadn't looked up anything about it. So I was really in the, is this making sense camp? And especially when the movie ends, that hits home. The interesting thing to me is we get like the way she relates to the world, right? Her coming back into society. She's a professional organist. She gets a job in this small town church. She is paid to play the organ in this church. Throughout her experience of just living in this town, and lots of things happen to her, she meets lots of colorful characters. She has these episodes where she essentially becomes invisible to the attentions of others. She can't hear anybody. They can't hear or see her. Then somehow she comes back into focus where she can see and interact with people. And I'm curious your take on what we're experiencing with her in those sort of cosmic asides that she experiences.
Well, actually, before I answer this question, let me ask you a question. Did you see where this film was going?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I didn't.
Good. So it was a surprise. So that was, So for people walking into this film who didn't know that there was a element of an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge here, who hadn't been spoiled by somebody else, for people who walked into this, you kind of likely are going to assume this woman was a survivor, and here she is now trying to rebuild her life. And things are strange because she's unsettled after this accident, right?
Right.
So when you get into these moments, I guess the way that I was reading it is there is some connection that she's ended up perhaps accidentally creating with this old abandoned building outside of town where there used to be a carnival after. I can't remember what it had originally been used for, but there's something with these spirits that are now haunting her. And I guess the way that I was reading it, or reading the intention of the story, is that by coming close to death, perhaps passing over into death before coming back out of it and walking out onto the shore there at the beginning of the film, perhaps she has now touched death in some way where death is kind of stalking her. Hence all these ghouls that keep appearing and following her around and appearing outside her car window as she's driving, or in her in the place that she's living in, et cetera, et cetera. And those moments to me seemed like there is this sense of her in a space where she's, I didn't think that they were trying to say she's actually like disappearing from these places in front of people or whatever, but it definitely seemed like perhaps she's not always there, and there might be moments where she's now kind of hallucinatory and dreaming she's doing these things. I mean, we kind of have the, like where the screen gets into like that dream transition sort of thing. And maybe it's something where we're in her mind and she's imagining these things where she's not actually there, but she's in a liminal space between the living and the dead in her mind.
Well, because of the framing mechanism of the film, the entire movie is the liminal space.
Oh,
right. So just the way the kind of metaphor that I had in my head was that her experience was like a rubber band. And as it gets more sort of invisible, it's being pulled taut. And as it gets super tight, she's actually in touch with and can see these ghoulish creatures who, to me, were the key creatures that were pulling her to death. Like, she's dead. This is her, like, let go, spirit, let go, like, come with us.
It's like Final Destination.
Yeah, right. They're presented in this kind of ghoulish means because of the tone of the movie. But, I think all three of the stages, her experience of her reality, her invisible in her reality, and her dealing with the ghouls and the mystery man, are all sort of just the yo-yo of experiences of her dying over the course of, however long it takes to drown. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm seeing it. That's how it made sense at the end.
At the end, right, yeah.
Yeah, like by the time we see her at the end. And so as I'm talking through it, I find I like it better. Right? I like it better. My initial reaction was, more of a, what the hell was that? But I really like having slept on it and really talked through the pieces, just coming to terms with the fact that this was her trying to let go. I think that was well constructed.
It was. I thought, such an interesting and haunting way to tell the story and craft something that allowed for questions like what we were just talking about with these hallucinatory moments of hers to not necessarily be answered. And it just creates this consistent tone through the story that is that allows for it to just fit right into kind of that horror vibe without necessarily needing to be just super bloody or, have these monsters or whatever. I mean, these ghouls are, fairly tepid. I mean, they're always approaching, ever encroaching, but it's not like, they've got fangs bared or anything like that.
Always approaching, ever encroaching. Andy, are you writing a song?
You like that?
That was wildly, beautifully unintentional poetry. Well done. What do you think of her?
By her, you mean Candace Hilligoss.
I do.
As our lead playing Mary Henry. I enjoyed her. I don't know. She didn't do a lot. She did this, The Curse of the Living Corpse 2 years later, South of Hell Mountain, uncredited in 1971, Talk Fast, a documentary in 2001, and Once Upon a Time on Mars. She was the voice in an animated short in 2022. She also was in an episode of Naked City and an episode of Quincy M.E. So, not a lot of things. She was actually asked to be in the remake of this, but said no, smartly. And, I enjoy her. There's this haunted look to her as an actress. Harvey looked for somebody who wasn't necessarily known, but had gone through the Lee Strasberg Academy and ended up casting her. I think she brings just a haunted quality to the role. She's kind of got those big eyes that feel a little distant, like they're, I don't want to say not friendly, but just lost, I think. And she plays that well in the film. I liked her performance quite a bit.
I think so too. And I think that's the vibe I get. I feel like that's the intentional sort of performative ingredient that she's bringing to this. Like everyone she's dealing with them at more than arm's length. Like she never really connects with the boarding house person, the crazy dude that lives across the street that nobody likes, or across the hall that nobody likes, with anybody. I find that sort of disconnection sometimes off-putting for her. I'm taken out of the movie a little bit because I'm watching too much of like, what's she doing right now? Like, what does she want me to understand? But overall, I think it's her performance is strong.
Well, to that point, it is interesting because, I mean, in the beginning we see them, she's in the car with two other girls and they drag race some boys and they have this little chase. She's not in the driver's seat. She's kind of passively enjoying it, I guess we could say, but she's not like living it up or anything, right?
She's already disconnected.
Yeah, she's already disconnected. She seems a little nervous, in fact, as they're driving fast and making some crazy driving decisions, particularly when we get to the bridge. So she already has this sense of disconnect. Then once she makes it out, we see her, she's working at an organ factory and she's playing the organ. And that definitely plays into the film because organ music is the score. And probably because of all of this.
It's a little much, if I'm honest. It's a little much.
Well, you have to really be a fan of organ music to take this much organ music. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's like, even when she's talking with those people, there is this sense of the way that she plays it, and likely how it was written and how Harvey directed it, is she's acting this way because of the accident. It was a painful thing to go through, a difficult situation. And now she's like a broken person and has to figure out how to get her life back together. That's kind of how they pitch it, right? I mean, that's very much what we see because she's like, well, they're like, maybe we'll see you one day. She's like, I'm never coming back to this town. Like, she's pretty
hardcore.
She's pretty adamant and like ready to figure out her life. And I think that's what's interesting because once she gets to this new place in Salt Lake City, like she tries to connect, but she doesn't really, like she only ends up connecting with the guy across the hall because she's like, she just doesn't want to be alone.
And he's a hound dog.
And he's a hound dog. And
God, what am I, 1950s grandpa?
And and he's definitely wanting to get in the sack with her. Like that's his whole thing. That's John. And so it's interesting because like she's always this way. Like we're always watching her like on her quote journey as she's trying to figure out how to repair herself. But she'll never be able to get there because as we get to the end, we realize why. But it's interesting because it really does play into that mental journey that she's trying to take.
That's the dream state that I think is satisfying about it. Like you can tell that she is tethered, right? And you can put yourself in that space where she's still trying to fix things because she doesn't yet quite know she's dead or dying. But even to the point where she's fired from the organ job, which as somebody who didn't know what was going on in the movie, that was quite a surprise and really poorly written. If the movie doesn't end the way it does, it's a stupid scene because he's like, they're playing music. I don't know the music that she was playing. It was like, I don't know. He came up and started yelling at her like it was witchcraft.
Well, I mean, there was a tonal difference. Like you could tell the difference between like the music that sounded a little more like typical, like slower paced religious.
But it's not like she was playing Elvis. Like, no. What's he mad at?
I know, it was pretty funny.
So he fires her, and then as she leaves, it's like he sort of changes his mind. No, wait, like I can help you still. Don't worry. I mean, don't leave in anger, kind of a thing. Like you can't be our organist, but I'd still love you to tithe every week.
I need your money.
But the end of the movie then sort of locks that down for me. Like she doesn't. Like that feels like so much of a dream state thing. Like I can't explain the internal argument that I'm having in my head when me in the form of a preacher and me in the form of an organist get in a big fight about playing witchcraft on the organ and then I'm laid off for no reason. Like that doesn't have to make sense once you know that that's all part of the liminal space circus that she's in right now. That's cool. That was cool.
Well, and we're seeing those bits and pieces of her life, right? There's the connection to the organ factory because she works there. So that ties into this journey that she takes because now she's playing the organ for this church. And it happens to also be a new organ from the factory that she works at. So all of that kind of ties together. There's that element of that same kind of guy, the hound dog, as you said, John, that she had hung out with. And so all of these different bits and pieces are things that she's kind of like still trying to contend with from her past, her living life.
Right. And as a result, like I feel like it pays off at the end when you find her dead. The thing that I want to go back to your point.
It's terrible.
What?
It pays off when you find her dead.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing great. The thing in the beginning, and this is why ends up being not quite a 5-star performance for me, is that I feel like the movie would be better if there was more of a difference between who we get in the first 5 minutes of the film before she dies as a participant in in the drag race as the girl who's, I want to see more personality so that I notice when there's less and when her personality is fading.
Like, what if she had been driving?
Yeah. What if she had been driving? What if she was the one who was exuberant and ego driven and, a big personality? That would have been, I think, a different experience with the character, and it would have made her more interesting.
That's actually really interesting. Like if we had had a little bit more of her and a sense that she was different, that she wasn't always this way. Yeah.
Exactly.
I can see that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That being said, it's not a thing that bugs me too much. I still enjoy it, but I definitely think that that's an interesting element that I would have liked to see. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder what the argument would be for not doing something like not giving us just a little bit more contrast, because it seems like it's one of those sort of easy fixes that makes her, that gives her a chance to change, right? Because as our protagonist, she's not really changing. She's going through some stuff, but she's just as much of a drip at the end as she was at the beginning.
Literally. Well, dripping at the end.
You're the one who made that offensive. Good. So that's good. At least we share the load.
Oh my goodness.
Are there other movies in this general space that you think about when you think of this movie? Besides, we talked about Owl Creek Bridge. But what jumps to mind as your favorite movies about people dying?
My favorite in this type of story is Jacob's Ladder. Like that film, I think very much fits this style and tone and amps it up in smart ways. Like I really enjoy what Adrian Lyne did with that one. It's just a very haunting take on it.
It's interesting. Between Jacob's Ladder and The Sixth Sense, you have this movie.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting to see kind of the sort of cinematic genetic connections between what they're doing here.
But I think there's always been this story, and there's long a story writing warning, don't use the easy out of having them wake up at the end. Oh, it was all a dream. Like that's a very easy out in storytelling because you can do whatever you want and then, but there's no consequences. You don't have to worry about it.
But this is the caveat.
Well, it's kind of the flip, right? It's a flip of that. It's all because you're actually dead. And it's an interesting flip. And so I don't know. I've always enjoyed this. I actually didn't even look on TV tropes to see what are other films that have this sort of storytelling style, but it would be interesting to see.
I think you just said something really important, but you look that up while I tell you what you just said that was important to me about that flip, because I think the success to movies of this ilk, right, of her experience being dead, because there are I can imagine another sort of set of easy outs is, oh, she was dead all along. Do you buy the experience that a whole movie could happen in the time it took for her to be alive at the beginning and her to be dead at the end? And this movie, I think, works because of the drowning part, right? Like, I get a sense that this is the psychological, emotional experience of her drowning and reliving her life over the course of some time, right? Yeah. Maybe it's a minute, maybe it's 3 minutes, whatever. And time is so funky in dreams and in trauma that I believe this. It's not like, oh, he was dead all the time. As soon as it becomes a spiritual thing, like this is happening on a different plane, I suddenly don't buy it anymore, right? I don't connect with it.
Yeah.
Like I need to be allowed to believe that this is what she saw in the experience of her life ending.
It's also interesting in this sort of thing to go, wow, she, in her final moments of life before she succumbs to death, she moved. Like, she had a whole moved across the country. Like, there was a lot going on in her mind. It's not just like life back in town. And that's an interesting thing. Like, maybe that's why she's kind of mopey and disconnected at the beginning, because she's in a town where she doesn't feel like she belongs anyway, and so maybe the entire reason that in her mental state, moving all the way across the country over to Salt Lake City, maybe that's part of what she's always wanted to do,
Wait, because where was she before? Do we know where she was before?
Kansas. They're in...
she was in Kansas.
It was Lawrence, Kansas? Well, I don't know. It's just Kansas, but yeah.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And it's interesting that, this whole thing starts with her and her friends, like, fighting in cars with boys, right? Like, there's a certain, like, gendered conversation here at the time that I think is interesting. Like, she's racing boys. She's putting off all of the advances of this guy, when she's in her death state. She is, like, I think the movie sort of shuns the matron of the boarding house in her head as old-fashioned. And yet the matron is very enthusiastic about taking as many baths as you want, which is, I think, fitting given that she's actively drowning at the time. Like, all of those sort of cultural cues, I think, are interesting. Like, I think you're right. Like, she's, to counter my earlier point, like, she's already unhappy before she's dead. And maybe that's more the message. That would be the counterpoint to making more of a movie about her being a change character. She's already dead and dying before she's dead and dying.
Right. And it's kind of all the more depressing that it takes this moment of dying for her to finally say, I need to realize some of the passion that I've been looking for in my life. And that's what she ends up getting and loses it all.
Grim.
Yeah. Just circling back around to TV tropes, they do have the trope, dead all along. So that's definitely one. And, some examples, I won't read a lot because it'll spoil things, but Beetlejuice, Adam and Barbara, they don't know that they're actually dead until they make it home and find the handbook and everything. That kind of kicks the plot into place. They have other examples that are interesting, like Captain America Civil War. Zemo's calling his wife and child on his phone, and it's not until the end we realize that they are actually dead, and he's listening to a recording because they had died in Sokovia. Jacob's Ladder is, of course, on the list. And there's quite a number of interesting ones on here. So Sixth Sense. So there you go.
Dead all along.
Dead all along. Yeah.
Okay. So Herk Harvey, What do we need to know about Herk Harvey?
Can I just tell you that he's already become one of my favorite people?
When did that happen? Do you remember when that happened?
Well, it was yesterday when I was researching him. Herk Harvey was born in Windsor, Colorado, Pete. Windsor, Colorado.
Outstanding.
The son of Everett and Minnie R. Pruitt Harvey. He grew up in Waverly, Illinois, and in Fort Collins, Colorado, where he graduated from Fort Collins High School. That's right. We share...
Andy, he's a fighting lambkin.
He is a lambkin with me. We share that in common. So Herk Harvey and I...
Just a minute. All the little hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. I don't think I had seen anything that Herk Harvey had done before this movie.
When you say anything he's done, like, you mean his industrial and educational films?
Korea, an overview.
Right, because, I mean, this is our one and done series. This is the only feature film that Herk Harvey made. But he was very busy. He worked at a company called Centron Films in the... he started working there in the 50s, 1952, and made industrial and educational films. And things like Shake Hands with Danger. And,
what about alcoholism?
Yeah, right. I kind of feel like we likely have seen things that he did in like elementary school, junior high, things like that played in classrooms, and we just didn't know, and we weren't paying attention that it was a Herk Harvey film. But I think that's an incredibly fascinating thing. And what's interesting is that 1956, American cinematographer did a feature on him, because in one of these industrial films that he made at Centron, he did, I guess, use some really innovative special effect techniques, and they did a story about these techniques that he had come up with, which I find fascinating.
Was that street safety is your problem? I'm sorry, man. These titles are amazing. Caring for your toys.
Yeah. Right? So
the Griper.
He actually appears in The Day After. Remember that one?
Yeah.
The TV movie on the nuclear holocaust. He was a farmer in that. Because he was from Kansas. They filmed that in Kansas. And so he did a lot of stuff that was Kansas related, and ended up teaching at the University of Kansas in film and theater for a bit, and sadly died of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, that's a rough one.
Yeah, in 1996.
It's right around this movie, he did what I'm sure filmmakers have coined Herk Harvey's spiritual trilogy: Dance Little Children, Your Junior High Days, and To Touch a Child. I mean, come on. Or how about Pork, the Meal with a Squeal? Andy, you can't make this stuff up.
I know, it's great. To Touch a Child. Cook School in Flint, Michigan is in trouble. All the students are getting killed, arrested, yelled at, and injured because after-school activity facilities are always closed. Finally, the school wises up, and soon there is no more chaos.
Wow.
That's not what I was picturing when I read the title, To Touch a Child.
Nope. That's probably a dated title. They would not call it that today,
No,
I don't think.
No. I think they mean to touch, like I'm touched.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what they mean. But
to evoke emotion from a soulless child. Signals. Read them or weep.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Shake Hands with Danger. Yeah, they're great. Like, I love these.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. I guess, when Criterion released Carnival of Souls on Blu-ray and DVD, they actually included clips from a number of these shorts of his. So I'm kind of curious to check those out, because I'm just curious if I watch any and have flashbacks to my youth going, oh my God, I totally have seen that one.
Yeah. When I think about these kinds of movies, all I think about is Schoolhouse Rock, which was so dominant in all the videos that I was watching.
Yeah.
I don't remember the ones that were on reels in my classroom.
Yeah, I remember one watching. They showed us one where we watched a baby being born.
I've seen that one. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, that was trauma.
I remember seeing one. This was actually in college, in business school. There was one that, was it Cliff Clavin or Norm? One or both of those was in one of these like educational films that they showed us in business school. And I thought we all cracked up because we're like, oh, it's the guy from Cheers. we also saw things about like, do you remember the one? It was teaching you about like when girls go through puberty, and there's a scene at the dinner table, and the young girl, they're all eating, and suddenly the young girl looks down in her lap and looks back up, and her mom sees, and the girl runs up to the bathroom, and the little brother's like, "What's up with her?" And the mom's like, "Your sister is a woman now." And the little boy goes, "She doesn't look any different to me."
I have not seen that one, Andy. Clearly, you learned a lot.
We watched that in health class. It's just that reaction. We always made fun of that because it was so funny. It doesn't look any different to me. Anyway.
His performance in this movie is superlative.
As the man. Yeah, he is the main ghoul that we end up watching over the course of the film. And great face, great moments with him coming toward the camera. A lot of like breaking the fourth wall as he's looking directly at us. I love when he pops up out of the water and everything. Like, there's just some haunting images here with these ghouls, like in the water when they're getting up, when they're all dancing, and the speed is just kicked up a little bit to make them really fast and creepy. When they all come at her, several times, like when they're all like, they're not slow. When they're running at her, they're running at her. Like they were creepy. I enjoyed what they did with the ghouls.
I think credit to Maurice Prather, cinematographer, and the editors, Bill DeJarnette, Dan Palmquist, and Herbert L. Strock. I mean, I think the visuals in here are exceptional, especially for when they were making the movie. But you're right, the water sequences. There are two back to back where he gets out of the water, and then another woman ghoul gets out of the water, and it's dizzying and sharp and beautiful, and the way the glare on the water behind them is extraordinary. I think it is a lovely presentation.
Yeah, no, they capture it well. Clearly, Harvey had learned a lot doing these industrial films to know how to put a film together. And I mean, essentially tell a story too. A lot of those educational films do kind of have a story over the course of it as they're telling it. So, I mean, I think, sure, you can tell you're working with some non-professional actors in some scenes. Like, there is that element to this that feels a little raw, but at the same time, it all kind of fits with the world that he's creating.
Yeah, it does. It's a weirdly smart film. I didn't expect to have enjoyed it as much as I did when I put it on last night. I thought it was going to be kind of much more of a joke. I think superficially I can laugh at it, but there's some good stuff going on in here. This
is a film that found a new audience later in its life. Luckily, Harvey was around to see that. But in the 80s, people started screening at festivals and everything. And especially around Halloween, this is one I think would be a lot of fun to see on the big screen with a crowd. There's this haunted element to it that I think would make a fun time. And so it's nice that it has found kind of this new audience and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a shame. It's a shame, honestly, that Harvey wasn't able to make anything else. He tried. He had a few other scripts that he got into close to being produced, but sadly never happened.
Same for John Clifford, who wrote this thing with him and ended up going on to write a bunch more of the industrial shorts, like To Touch a Child and Jamaica, Haiti, and the Lesser Antilles, and United Kingdom, Crowded Islands. Don't forget the Speed Collect Collator. That is a classic. He also did Encounters, the TV series. He wrote one episode, which was a series of plays showing what might have happened if famous historical or literary characters had actually met one another.
Oh.
I had never heard of this.
Interesting. I hadn't either. It sounds interesting, though.
His episode was Quevedo, the Soul's Dark Night, with Don Francisco de Quevedo and his sister. I don't know. Or the sister. I don't know who the people were. Quevedo was one of them. Anyway, he wrote that one, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
well,
really interesting collaboration on a very short feature film career, but creators create.
Yeah. No, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back, but first, the credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Out of Flux, Luke Alieris, Elon Peretz, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Do you remember your first true nerd shirt? As a kid of the 70s, I had the usual, a knit vest with Bert, of Bert and Ernie Natch, and a plush nose sticking right out of my belly button. For sure, that was up in my closet. But that's not what I'm talking about. By the time I was thinking about what I wanted to wear that might be a little bit more interesting, there was one shirt I needed more than any other. Keep on truckin'. It was a Robert Crumb design with a van on it that looked like the Mystery Machine and a bearded hippie with one leg stretched out, a giant barefoot on the end of it. That was the epitome of cool as a 9-year-old. I was also a Pepper, even though I didn't actually drink Dr. Pepper. Eventually, I celebrated the Rolling Stones with their open mouth, outstretched tongue logo because my uncle thought it would be funny and offensive to my mom to see me wearing it. But what are you wearing today? Maybe you don't have a savvy uncle putting catchy clothes on your back like I did. Maybe you're thinking that you want to wear something that people will ask you about when they see you wearing it, but you just have no idea where to start. Don't worry. Uncle Pete and Uncle Andy are here for you. Visit thenextreel.com/merch to check out the latest in our line of nerd shirts that celebrate the movies we love. If you're a classicist, you might pick up a Streetcar Named Desire or a Spicoli Surf School. Or maybe you're a real lampoon and want to sport the Rusty's European Tour logo emblazoned across your chest. But if you're a true cinehead, you'll definitely want to look at our latest designs in the Filmmaker series. Title clouds of the films of our favorite filmmakers, Kurosawa, Leone, Carpenter, and Kubrick. And yes, it's okay to pick up one of each. What's great is that because our store sits on TeePublic, you can pick up all the designs that strike your fancy on mugs, pillows, phone cases, stickers, and more. Visit thenextreel.com/merch for your next favorite nerd shirt today. And thank you for supporting the team at The Next Reel. On with the show. Sequels and remakes, Andy. Oh, sequels and remakes.
Yes, indeed. There was a remake of this in 1998. We already mentioned, directed by Adam Grossman and Ian Kessner, starring Bobby Phillips. It doesn't have a lot to do with this film, with this story. It's very much a situation where they borrowed the title and the revelation at the end. And that's pretty much it. It's they did try to get some cameos back. They had Sidney Berger, who played John, appear in a cameo, but Candace did not want to do so. Again, probably a smart decision. This it was released as Wes Craven Presents, but even with Wes Craven's name attached, did not get enough of audience appeal to get a theatrical release and ended up going straight to video. But there was a 2008 unofficial remake that happened that was called Yella, directed by Christian Petzold. Haven't even heard of this one, so that's interesting that somebody came along to do this. It's German, I guess that's why I probably haven't heard it. In 2016, Riff Tracks did a release of this, a live event. Former MST3K people came on board to do this. And then in 2020, there was a novelization called Nightmare Pavilion, written by Andrew J. Rauch, that ended up getting released. Outside of that, this is one of those films that has tapped into a certain group of people who pull clips of it for their music. And so there's lots of samples. There's the Northern Irish rock band Therapy that put it in their song. There was the Lana Del Rey, her song 13 Beaches has some of it. Drake's video uses clips in his video for Knife Talk. Why These Coyotes used clips of the film in their song, and the dance hall scenes at the end were featured in the music video for Phoebe Bridgers' Smoke Signals. So definitely it's one of these things that people have tapped into the look, the vibe, the tone, and integrated it into their music.
That's awesome. I like that Phoebe Bridgers.
Have you seen the...
I haven't seen the video, but I know the song. I need to check it out. That's very cool. How did it do at award season? Was it a long and healthy list?
Well, when we talk about the numbers, you'll get a sense as to why this section has nothing. There's not a single award for this, sadly. But, that is one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then tell me about the numbers. How did it do at the box office?
Yeah, well, for his solo feature film outing, Harvey raised $33,000 for this, or $346,000 in today's dollars. Some of that was his own money. No matter how you slice it, that is a micro budget. This film opened September 26, 1962, on one screen in Kansas City, opposite The Longest Day and Gigot with Jackie Gleason. This played across the U.S. and internationally in a fairly limited release, but unfortunately there are no box office numbers. It wasn't a very popular film. Not a lot of people saw it. And so I can't tell you how well it did at the time, if it made its money back or what. But still, with that low budget, and now with the popularity that's kind of resurged since the 80s, I'd like to think that they have eventually made some money back on it.
Eventually is still something.
Eventually.
Right? Eventually. All right. Well, I'm glad we watched it. It was super fun. And, I don't think when we started the show, I don't think we even talked specifically about why this is ending up on our series this year.
Yeah, it's just our one and done series. This is one of the series that I ended up putting together for this current season, and looking at directors who made one film and that's it. And so it should be a fun exploration. I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. It's definitely something I'd love to check out again. And see where we go when we jump into our next one.
Me too.
Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here is the trailer for that next one next week. Leonard Castle's The Honeymoon Killers.
Dear Martha, this is the first letter of this sort I have ever written.
Ray was a con man who made one mistake. He fell in love and took Martha along for the ride.
I can arrange a meeting with a very nice woman in New Orleans.
There's no harm in writing to somebody who's so gentle and refined, and whose sister is a nurse.
Ray and Martha could have been the honeymoon lovers, but Martha's insane jealousy turned them into the honeymoon killers.
You hear from my lawyer! Get the hell out of here!
Get rid of her! Choke her! I don't care what you do with her!
Please!
Jealousy led Martha and Ray down one of the darkest paths in the annals of American crime.
You're the hottest bitch I've ever seen!
And I don't have to take that from you.
Oh, my God. She's dead.
If you've never heard of Martha and Ray, see The Honeymoon Killers, then try to forget them.
She's in love with you. I can tell. So what?
Jealousy turned each perfect setup into a nightmare.
You promised!
Get rid of her! Choke her!
Do you realize that with your stupid jealousy, you could have gotten me into trouble?
I'd rather see you in jail than making love to another woman.
If you've never heard of Martha and Ray, see The Honeymoon Killers, then try to forget them.
I don't want the checks back. No, I don't want them back. I'm not going to call Sarah. All right. I just want to go for a walk by myself and think things over.
If you've never heard of Martha and Ray, see The Honeymoon Killers, then just try to forget them.
Letterboxd Andy, oh dear, what do you do with a movie that opened in one screen in Kansas City? What do you do with that?
Yeah, that's a tough way to start your releases, I guess. But you know what?
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with this. I really enjoyed the tone. This is one that could even go up in my estimation over time. But it's easy to say 3.5 and a heart. 3.5 is, I think a good place for films that are this sort that I just really enjoy watching. And so I'm very happy and easy to put it at 3.5.
Yeah, so mine, as Pete No Half Stars Right, I feel like this is where I run into a little bit of trouble because, you're probably right that if I were a different person, 3.5 would be the answer, but I'm not. And so is 4 the answer? And I don't know that it is, but it could be one day. So I'm going to go with 3 and a heart and be happy with that. And just know that this is absolutely a movie I will revisit. It's goofy and fun, and I need to check it out again.
Well, yeah, and I think you're right. And I think 3.5, I think that zone, there's a lot of this sort of film that sits there for me that I still really enjoy,
Yeah, right.
Well, this will average out to 3.25 over on our Letterboxd page. That will bump it up to 3.5 over there. So you can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find the show at The Next Reel. So what did you think about Carnival of Souls? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over at our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I've got one that's that's lovely. Can I share it?
Please.
Opens with a quote, "You cannot live in isolation from the human race, you know." And then Mosquito Dragon gives this 5-star review. Sometimes a psychotronic film comes along which, despite some obvious amateurishness, simply bypasses all the clumsy attempts at profundity from every elevated horror movie ever made, and just gracefully achieves an almost unspeakable transcendence. This movie might have more depth of meaning per minute of runtime than any horror movie in history. Why can't anybody hear me?
Wow.
That's some auteur reviewing right there. From Mosquito Dragon.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah. Lovely, sobering account of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to follow up, what do you have?
Mine is the flip side of quality from yours, but it did make me laugh. It's a 0.5-star by Seth, who says, "I bet it's only old people that actually like this movie."
Oh, dear. Looks at driver's license, checks date.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Letterboxd.